You're the leak, Natalie. Cole's voice sliced through the glass-walled conference room like a blade I never saw coming. I sat frozen, staring at him across the polished table. Next to him sat Patricia from HR. Her face a mask of rehearsed sympathy. Behind them, the entire office buzzed with normal Friday energy, completely unaware that my world was ending. That's impossible, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. Cole leaned back, arms crossed. His expression somewhere between disappointment and triumph. Your user ID logged into the system at 11:47 p.m. last Tuesday. Confidential client files were accessed, then forwarded to an external email address. My stomach dropped. I'd built that data system from scratch. I knew every protocol, every security layer. I was home that night. I didn't. We have the logs, Natalie. Patricia slid a printed report across the table. My username. My access codes. Timestamps I couldn't explain. Someone's using my credentials, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I could see they'd already decided. Cole stood, buttoning his suit jacket with theatrical finality. We'll need your laptop and badge. Security will escort you out. The walk to my desk felt endless. Faces turned. Whispers started. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking, and let the security guard lead me through the lobby like a criminal. At the elevator, Cole appeared beside me. He leaned close, his cologne suffocating. You should have kept your head down, Natalie. 3 months earlier, everything had been different. Our department had just closed the golden quarter, record profits that made the executive team glow during the all-hands meeting. I'd spent 6 weeks buried in data analysis, finding patterns nobody else saw, restructuring our client engagement model to maximize retention. Cole stood at the front of the conference room that morning, his smile wide and confident. Thanks to brilliant strategic planning, he announced, clicking to a slide showing our numbers. We've exceeded targets by 18%. I'd written that strategy. My name was nowhere on the slide. After the meeting, people congratulated him, shook his hand, called him visionary. I stood near the back, holding my coffee, feeling invisible. When Cole finally approached me, his voice dropped to something private. Great work on the back-end stuff, Natalie. Really solid. Back-end stuff. As if the entire model hadn't originated from my spreadsheets. But I smiled, nodded, went back to my desk. That afternoon, while reconciling quarterly reports, I noticed something odd. A vendor payment for $42,000, listed under consulting services. The contract number didn't match our system. I cross-referenced it against active agreements. Nothing. I flagged it in our shared drive and sent Cole a quick message. Found a discrepancy in Q2 vendor payments. Want me to dig into it? His reply came fast. Finance team will handle it. Focus on Q4 prep. But when I glanced through the glass wall of his office, I saw his expression. The easy smile had vanished. His jaw was tight. Something wasn't right. The next morning, Cole called me into his office. He closed the door, something he rarely did, and gestured toward the chair. His tone was casual, almost friendly, but his eyes weren't. About that vendor thing you flagged, he said, leaning against his desk. I appreciate the thoroughness, but you've got to stay in your lane, Natalie. Finance handles discrepancies. You handle data. I just thought. I know. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. But we don't want to step on toes, right? Auditing isn't your job. I nodded slowly, feeling the warning beneath his words. Good. Now let's focus on what matters. Q4 projections are due Friday. I left his office feeling uneasy, like I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to see. That evening I stayed late, telling myself I was just being thorough. I pulled up our vendor database and searched for the consulting payment. The agreement was there, buried under a generic file name. No signatures, no approval chain, just a routing number to something called H Consulting. I Googled the company. Nothing. No website, no LinkedIn, no business registry. Then I noticed the contact email listed on the invoice. c.hargrove.services@mail.com. Cole's personal domain. My hands hovered over the keyboard, my pulse loud in my ears. I saved a screenshot to my personal drive and closed the window. Whatever this was, it wasn't a mistake. 1 week later, HR called me in for what they described as an informal chat. Patricia smiled warmly as I sat down, but her tone was all business. We're just conducting a routine review of data access policies, making sure everyone's following protocol. Of course, I said, trying to sound calm. She pulled up a screen and angled it toward me. You've accessed the financial database 43 times in the past month. That's significantly more than usual. I was reconciling vendor payments for the quarterly report, I explained. Cole asked me to. Her smile tightened. Cole mentioned you've been digging into areas outside your scope. My chest tightened. I flagged one discrepancy. That's part of my job. Patricia nodded slowly, like she was humoring me. Just remember, Natalie, access privileges come with responsibility. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. The meeting ended with a polite handshake, but I felt the walls closing in. The next morning I tried logging into the financial database. Access denied. My heart sank. I messaged Cole. My access to the finance system is restricted. Is this temporary? His reply was instant. Must be an IT glitch. I'll look into it. But he never did. By noon, I'd been locked out of 3 more directories. My palms were sweating as I stared at my screen, realizing someone was erasing my ability to see what I'd already found. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 line. He's using your credentials. The next Monday, everything unraveled. We were in a live client meeting, 12 people around the table, when I tried pulling up a projection model I'd built. My screen froze. Then flashed red. Access denied. Clicked again. Same message. Cole stood at the head of the table, mid-sentence, and paused. Natalie, you have that data. My login isn't working. His brow furrowed, a performance of confusion. He walked over, leaned down, and glanced at my screen. Then his voice rose, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Why would you even have access to that? My face burned. All eyes turned toward me. I built that model, I said quietly. I've always had access. Cole straightened, shaking his head slowly. We'll address this later. The meeting continued, but I couldn't focus. The air felt thick with judgment. After it ended, people avoided my gaze. I heard whispers near the coffee station. Back at my desk, I stared at my screen, humiliation crawling under my skin. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Check your access logs. Midnight logins. His IP. I looked around the office. Nobody was watching. I opened an old backup drive I'd saved offline months ago, something I kept for emergencies. My hands shook as I pulled up the access history. There they were. Logins under my name. 11:43 p.m., 12:18 a.m., 1:02 a.m. times I'd been asleep. And every single one traced back to Cole's IP address. I sat in my car that night, staring at the logs on my laptop screen. The pattern was clear. Every time a suspicious file had been accessed, every time confidential data moved outside protocol, it happened under my credentials. But the IP addresses didn't lie. They pointed straight to Cole's workstation. He'd been using my login to cover his tracks. Felt sick, angry, terrified. But I also felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't random. This was calculated. He'd framed me weeks ago, maybe months, and now he was tightening the noose. I thought about going to HR, but Patricia had already shown whose side she was on. I thought about going to the CEO, but Cole had his ear. I was alone. Then I remembered Darren. Darren worked in cybersecurity, quiet and methodical, the kind of person people overlooked. 2 years ago, I'd helped him navigate a messy project when his manager tried blaming him for a server crash. He never forgot it. I texted him, "Can we talk?" Off the record. His reply came fast. "Coffee tomorrow. 7 a.m. I exhaled slowly, staring at the glow of the office building in my rearview mirror. Cole thought he'd buried me. He had no idea I was about to start digging. Darren sat across from me at a corner table, his coffee untouched. I walked him through everything. The vendor payments, the fake company, the midnight logins, the setup. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. "You're not wrong," he said quietly. "And if you're right, this is bigger than you think. Can you help me?" He hesitated, glancing around the empty cafe. "I can run a discreet trace. Check the server logs without leaving fingerprints. But if I find what I think I'll find, we have to be smart about how we use it. I just need proof." Darren nodded. "Give me 2 days." Those 2 days felt like 2 years. I went through the motions at work, avoiding Cole's gaze, keeping my head down. My coworkers had started treating me differently. Conversations stopped when I approached. Nobody asked me to lunch. On the 3rd morning, Darren messaged me, "Found something. Meet me in the parking garage. Level 3. I found him leaning against his car, laptop open on the hood. "There's an encrypted folder buried in the internal server," he said, turning the screen toward me. "It's labeled H Consulting. Same name as the vendor you flagged." My pulse quickened. "What's in it?" "Invoices, contracts, payment authorizations, all signed by Cole, and all routing money from real client accounts into this shell company." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. "He's stealing." Darren nodded grimly. "And he's been using your credentials to move the money, so it looks like you did it." For the next week I played dumb. I acted nervous, distracted, like someone barely holding it together. I fumbled during meetings, avoided eye contact, let Cole think I was spiraling. He ate it up. In the hallway one morning he stopped me, his voice dripping with false concern. "You okay, Natalie? You seem off." "Just tired," I said, forcing a weak smile. He nodded, satisfied, and walked away. Meanwhile, Darren worked in the shadows. He set up a mirror database, a hidden duplicate that recorded every transaction Cole made in real time. Every file he touched, every transfer he authorized, every login under my name. It all copied silently to a server Cole didn't know existed. "We're building a timeline," Darren explained one night over encrypted chat. "Irrefutable evidence. When this goes public, there won't be any room for him to lie." I watched the data pile up. Payments rerouted. Fake invoices. Shell accounts. It was all there, clean and damning. But there was something else. One name kept appearing in the transaction notes. Not Cole's. Someone higher up. A name I recognized from the executive roster. The CEO's brother. My stomach turned. This wasn't just Cole. This was a scheme running all the way to the top. And I was caught in the middle of it. Cole called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon. He closed the door and gestured to the chair. His expression soft, almost sympathetic. I sat, my heart pounding, forcing myself to stay calm. "Natalie," he began, leaning against his desk, "I know things have been tense. And I want you to know, I don't think you're a bad person." I said nothing. "But this investigation, it's not going away. Char's involved. Legal's asking questions." He sighed, shaking his head like he was genuinely torn. "I can make this all go away if you just resign quietly. No fuss. Clean exit. Good reference." His tone was gentle, but his eyes were cold. I looked down, pretending to consider it. Then I noticed something. A flash drive sticking out of his computer. The label read Q4 Audit in his handwriting. I memorized the color, the brand, position. "I need time to think," I said quietly. Cole smiled, relieved. "Of course. Take the weekend." I stood, nodded, and left. But I wasn't thinking about resigning. I was thinking about that flash drive. And how badly I needed to see what was on it. On Monday morning, HR summoned me to an official meeting. The email was formal, cold. Investigation update. Your presence is required. I walked into the conference room to find Patricia, a lawyer I'd never met, and Cole. He sat across from me, his face a mask of professionalism. The lawyer spoke first. Miss Brooks, we're conducting an internal investigation into data access irregularities. We need to ask you some questions. For an hour they grilled me. Where was I on certain nights? Why had I accessed financial records? Did I have any outside business relationships? I answered calmly, sticking to the facts. Cole watched me the whole time, silent, his expression unreadable. At the end, Patricia stood. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, you're on administrative leave. My stomach dropped. What? It's standard procedure, the lawyer said. You'll still be paid. But we need you off-site while we complete our review. I looked at Cole. He didn't flinch. I left the building in a daze, my badge deactivated, my access revoked. That night I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. Then my phone buzzed. Darren, they're cleaning his system right now. But I saved the mirror. I sat up, my pulse racing. He'd backed up everything before they could erase it. Every transaction, every stolen dollar, every lie. And now I had it all. That night, Darren and I met in a parking lot outside the city. He handed me an external drive, encrypted and password protected. Everything's on here. Metadata, timestamps, access logs. All legal. Nothing confidential without proper authorization. I held it like it was made of glass. This is enough. More than enough. But there's something else. He pulled up a file on his tablet. A recorded Teams meeting. Cole's voice, clear and unmistakable, bragging to someone off-screen. We've been siphoning quietly for months. Nobody's even looking. My hand shook. When was this? 2 months ago. Internal call. Archived automatically. He didn't know it was being recorded. I stared at the timestamp. This was the smoking gun. What do I do with it? Darren's expression was serious. You send it to people who can't be bought. Not HR. Not the CEO. The external compliance board. The one the company answers to. I nodded slowly. And Natalie. He met my eyes. Once you do this, there's no going back. I looked at the drive in my hands. At the recording. At the proof that could destroy Cole and everyone protecting him. Good, I said quietly. I'd already lost everything. Now it was time to take something back. The next morning I sent the files. Not to HR. Not to Patricia. Not to anyone inside the company. I sent them directly to the external compliance board, the independent auditors the company was legally required to answer to. Subject line. Evidence of financial fraud and identity misuse. I attached the metadata, the access logs, the mirrored transactions, the recorded meeting. Then I hit send and closed my laptop. 4 hours I waited. My phone stayed silent. My inbox stayed empty. Then, at 3:47 p.m., everything exploded. An emergency audit was announced company-wide. All financial systems locked. All executive access suspended pending review. I watched the news from my couch, my heart pounding. Cole's name wasn't mentioned. Not yet. But I knew. The walls were closing in on him now. And this time I wasn't the one trapped inside. 2 days later, my suspension email was quietly retracted. No explanation. No apology. Just a terse message from HR. Your leave has been lifted. Please report to the office Monday morning. I stared at the email, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. When I walked into the building that Monday, people stared. But this time the whispers felt different. Uncertain. Confused. Cole's office was dark. I sat at my desk, hands shaking, and waited. At 10 a.m., Patricia appeared. Natalie, the board would like to speak with you. I followed her to the top floor, into a sleek conference room I'd never been inside before. 6 people sat around the table. The board chair, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Kane, gestured to a seat. Miss Brooks, she began, her voice calm but firm. We've reviewed the materials you submitted. We have some questions. For the next 2 hours I walked them through everything. The fake vendor. The midnight logins. The stolen credentials. The recordings. I handed them printed logs, time-stamped and cross-referenced. I showed them the IP traces. I played the audio of Cole bragging about the scheme. When I finished, the room was silent. Victoria leaned forward. If not you, then who? I slid the final document across the table. Cole's IP address. His access history. His signature on every fraudulent invoice. Cole Hargrove, I said quietly. And possibly others. Victoria's expression didn't change. But I saw something flicker in her eyes. Thank you, Miss Brooks. We'll be in touch. Cole's office was locked down that afternoon. The official reason was IT maintenance. But everyone knew better. He still walked the halls, still smiled at people, still acted like nothing was wrong. But I saw the cracks. The tightness in his jaw. The way his hands shook when he thought no one was looking. In the break room, I overheard him talking to another manager. This is a witch hunt, he said, voice low and bitter. Someone's trying to make me the fall guy. I poured my coffee slowly, keeping my face neutral. That night someone knocked on my apartment door. I checked the peephole. Oh, my blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone, opened the voice recorder and cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock engaged. What are you doing here? He asked. He looked different. Disheveled. Desperate. Natalie, please. We need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. You framed me. I was trying to protect you. His voice rose then dropped. Look, I cut a few corners. That's it. But this witch hunt, it's going to ruin both of us. You stole money. You used my credentials to cover it up. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to something almost threatening. You're nothing without my name on your work. You know that, right? I kept my face calm, my phone recording every word. Leave, Cole. Now. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. I closed the door, locked it, and exhaled. The recording was still running. I had him. The next morning I forwarded the audio to HR and the compliance board. Cole's voice, clear and unmistakable, admitting to fraud. Threatening me. Revealing everything. By noon he was placed on administrative leave. He didn't go quietly. People said he screamed at Patricia. Called me vindictive. Accused the board of caving to political pressure. Then he stormed out of the building. His box of belongings clutched under one arm. I watched from my desk, feeling nothing but relief. That afternoon I received an email from the CEO. We need to talk. Privately. My stomach tightened. This wasn't over. The CEO's office was on the top floor. All windows and leather furniture. He gestured for me to sit. His expression unreadable. Miss Brooks, he began. I want to thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. Cole Hargrove's actions were unacceptable. I nodded, saying nothing. We'd like to offer you full reinstatement. Promotion, actually. Senior data analyst. Salary increase. Reporting directly to me. Waited. But, he continued, his voice careful, we'd appreciate your discretion. Keep this internal. No press. No legal action. We'll handle Cole quietly. I met his eyes. And your brother. His expression flickered. Just for a second. My brother had no involvement. The transaction logs say otherwise. The room went cold. He leaned back, his voice hardening. Be very careful, Natalie. Understood. I already sent everything to the compliance board. They'll decide what's internal and what isn't. I walked out, my legs shaking but my head high. 2 days later, a journalist I'd once worked with during a charity tech initiative published a story. Tech VP under investigation for fraudulent vendor deals. The company's stock dropped 6% in an hour. Cole Hargrove was terminated within the week. The official statement was brief. Following an internal investigation, Cole Hargrove has been dismissed pending legal review. My name was cleared publicly. But the story didn't end there. The compliance report became public record. Investigators found not just Cole's fraud, but a wider scheme involving the CEO's brother, who had funneled contracts to H Consulting in exchange for kickbacks. Both men were charged. The company's board offered me a new role. Director of Data Integrity. Accepted. Not because I forgave them, but because I'd earned it. Months later, I walked into my new office. Same building. New leadership. Different energy. Cole's old corner office, the one with the glass walls and the view of the city, now had a new plaque beside the door. Director of Data Integrity. Natalie Brooks. I stood there for a moment staring at my name. Solid. Permanent. Real. Darren appeared in the doorway, grinning. You leaked the truth, huh? I smiled faintly, setting my box down on the desk. Some datasets clean themselves, I said quietly. You just have to let the corrupt ones collapse. He laughed, and I looked out the window at the city below. I'd been accused of leaking data. But in the end, I'd leaked something far more powerful. The truth. And no one could take that back. The first week in my new role was surreal. People who'd avoided me during the investigation now greeted me warmly. Meetings I used to watch from the sidelines I now led. My calendar filled with requests for briefings, audits, strategic planning. But the weight of what had happened didn't lift immediately. I still flinched when I saw Patricia in the hallway. Still felt my pulse spike when I passed Cole's old office, even though it was mine now. Darren stopped by one afternoon, holding 2 coffees. Thought you could use this, he said, handing me one. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the city through the glass. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Going after him. Thought about it. About the fear. The isolation. The risk. No, I said finally. I regret not doing it sooner. He nodded, understanding. That evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. You did the right thing. Thank you. It was signed by someone I'd never met. A junior analyst from another department. Someone who'd probably been watching the whole time, afraid to speak up. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I realized, this was bigger than me. This was about every person who'd been silenced. Every name erased. Every truth buried. And now the door was open. The company changed after that. New policies were implemented. Whistleblower protections. Independent audits. Transparent financial reporting. Victoria Kane, the board chair, personally oversaw the restructuring. She called me into her office one afternoon. You did something brave, Natalie, she said. Most people would have walked away. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. You chose the hard thing. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a proposal for a new ethics division, designed to prevent what happened to me from happening to anyone else. I want you to lead it, she said. I looked at the proposal, my throat tight. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a data analyst. You're someone who knows how systems break, Victoria said. And how to fix them. I took the folder home that night and read every page. By morning I'd made my decision. 6 months later, I stood in front of the entire company at an all-hands meeting. The room was packed. Faces I recognized. Faces I didn't. I took a breath and began. My name is Natalie Brooks. And 6 months ago, I was accused of leaking confidential data. The room went silent. I didn't leak data, but I did expose fraud. And in doing so, I learned something important. Systems only work when people trust them. And trust only exists when truth is protected. I clicked to the next slide, showing the new ethics framework. This company failed me. It failed a lot of people. But failure doesn't have to be permanent. I spent the next 20 minutes walking them through the new policies. The independent hotline. The audit protocols. The protections for anyone who spoke up. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It was relief. That evening, I sat in my apartment, looking at the photograph I'd kept on my desk since day one. It was me and my father, taken years ago at my college graduation. He'd been so proud, so certain I'd do great things. I wondered what he'd think of all this. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You're an inspiration. Thank you for not staying silent." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the truth was, I hadn't done this for recognition. I'd done it because staying silent would have killed something inside me. And in the end, protecting that part of myself mattered more than anything Cole could have taken. A year after everything happened, I received an invitation. It was from a women's leadership summit, asking me to speak about navigating workplace retaliation. I almost declined. But then I thought about that junior analyst who'd emailed me. About Darren, who'd risked his career to help me. About everyone who'd been too afraid to act. Accepted. The day of the summit, I stood backstage, my hands shaking. When they called my name, I walked onto the stage, faced a room of 300 people and told my story. Not the sanitized version. The real one. The fear. The isolation. The moments I almost gave up. And the moment I decided I wouldn't. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly people stood. One by one, the entire audience rose to their feet. I stood there, tears in my eyes, and realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. The fallout from Cole's case continued for months. He was charged with embezzlement, identity theft, and fraud. The CEO's brother faced similar charges. Both men were convicted. The company settled with several employees who'd been wrongfully accused or retaliated against over the years. I wasn't the first. I was just the first who fought back. As for me, I stayed. Not because I owed the company anything, but because I'd built something here. Something real. Something that mattered. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me again. 2 years after the accusation that nearly destroyed me, I walked into my office and saw something new on my desk. Letter. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it carefully. "Dear Natalie, I don't know if you'll remember me. I worked in accounting during the investigation. I wanted to speak up, but I was scared. Watching you fight back gave me the courage to report my own supervisor for misconduct. Because of you, I'm still here. Thank you." I read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in my drawer. Outside, the city glowed in the late afternoon light. Thought about Cole. About the lies. About the system that almost crushed me. And I realized something. I didn't leak data. I leaked the truth. And truth, once released, doesn't disappear. Spreads. Grows. Changes everything. I smiled, turned back to my computer and got to work. Because some systems were worth protecting. And some collapses were long overdue.